Welcome back, Warp Fiends. My name's Blake, you're watching Warhammer Math, and today we're talking about how to take down Mortarion. I have taken my Blood Angels to a great number of tournaments. I have never managed to beat a Death Guard army. My buddy Drew constantly brings Mortarion, and every time he soaks up all of the damage and lays waste to my army like frickin' Sauron. Death Guard are essentially my nemesis. So I have written a program that will allow me to do millions of simulations so that I can figure out exactly what is required to take Mortarion down. Awesome, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to take a look at Mortarion's datasheet. Mortarion is an absolute beast. So we can see he's got toughness 12, he's got a 2-up save, 16 wounds, he's got a 4-up invulnerable save. On top of that, we have a feel no pain 5+, so he's going to be ignoring a third of his wounds. And every turn he gets to select one of these host of plagues, and the one he's most likely to choose is Miasma of Pestilence, which always gives him and the things around him the benefit of cover. On top of that datasheet, Mortarion has two stratagems that he can use. First of all, he can use Cloud of Flies, which is really going to boost his durability because it gives him the ability of stealth. And then sometimes, if you're willing to spend 2 CP on it, he can also give himself Disgustingly Resilient, which gives him subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of attacks.
That is disgusting.
In close combat. That is incredibly rough, especially as a Blood Angels character, because it's primarily close combat where I do all my damage.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is what we have to overcome. So what really got me started on this, again, I've had a vendetta against Death Guard for a long time, is I got to watch an episode of 40K in 40 Minutes that was Death Guard versus Blood Angels that was aired on November 7th, and we saw Tak going up against a Death Guard army. You can see a clip of that right here with Mortarion placed right on the front lines, and Tak has a Land Raider and a Repulsor that he's going to use to try and take Mortarion down. So
I was so excited when this episode came up because you were so enthused. You're like, oh, he's going to do the thing that it's impossible. What the hell is he going to do?
I wanted so badly to see if Tak could manage this.
And Tak is brilliant, so if anybody has a good idea, it'll be him.
Yeah, I really feel like Tak is the best player on that channel.
Ooh, spicy.
But what really struck me was that on the very first turn, he decided to move up that Land Raider and the Repulsor, and he was surprised that they were not able to kill or even bracket Mortarion, and I was shocked at his surprise because I have attacked Mortarion a number of times and never been able to take him down once, which is very frustrating to me. So I decided that I wanted to run some simulations and find out how likely was Tak actually to take Mortarion down in this situation.
So our first scenario here, testing Mortarion, is Tak's attempt. Let's see how
Tak's attempt. Yeah, so we're going to see, can this Land Raider and this Repulsor take down Mortarion? All right, so again, for the Land Raider, we had twin heavy bolters, we had 2 Godhammer Lee's cannons, a Hunter Killer Missile, a Multi-Melta, and a Storm Bolter. And then the Repulsor had a Las Talon, a Twin Laze Cannon, a Hunter Slayer Missile, and the Repulsor Defensive Array.
A Hunter Slayer is not the same as a Hunter Killer?
No, there are actually 2 separate single-use items that you can use here, and he used both of them. So, of course, in this case, Tak actually declared Oath of Moment on Mortarion, so we could re-roll all of our hits, and we also expected Mortarion to use Cloud of Flies, so he gave himself -1 to be hit. What do you think the odds were that Tak was able to take down Mortarion in this case?
Now, I know that your threshold for attempting a thing is 80% certainty. I bet Tak is smart enough to not do something. I bet he had at least 50% certainty, right? Like, he probably had expectation value right around Mortarion's.
That's reasonable. I mean, I'll take increasingly desperate attempts, like, as the game goes on and as things are looking desperate, but especially on turn 1. This is literally turn 1 of the game. I'm mostly going to be going for high probability attacks. So in this case, we find that both of those items in combination were likely to do between 3 and 9 damage, with an expectation value of 6.14 damage.
There was not a snowball's chance in hell then.
Well, there was a snowball's chance in hell. He had about a 2.7% chance of taking him down, and he's bracketed at 6 wounds, so there was a 20% chance that he could bracket him.
So 1 in 5 times he might bracket him.
1 in 5 times he might bracket him. So, as I expected, this was a a very low probability attack. I was really surprised that he thought that there was a good chance that he could bracket or kill Mortarion in this case. So I'm not necessarily saying that I could do better, but one thing that I did notice, if we go back to that deployment screen, is that Mortarion deployed right on the line here. And down here in the center, we can see that Tak had deployed an entire 10-man squad of Death Company with Lamartys. Yeah, it's a little callback.
Smart!
Which means at this point, those two units were only 22 inches apart, and the Death Company can move 12 inches. So because it's the first turn, and because the Liberator Assault Group has access to advance and charge, Tak had the ability to advance and charge to try and get 10 inches.
Okay.
So I decided to take a look at that. So if you have 3 dice and you're trying to make it 10 inches, you've got a 62.5% chance of making that roll. And Death Company has native rerolls to charge, so with the reroll, they have an 85.9% chance to make that charge into Mortarion on the very first turn.
Okay, so we're going to attempt this a second time, and we're going to assume that Tak threw his Death Company at them also?
Exactly. So the assumption is, what if Tak took the Land Raider, the Repulsor, the 10-man Death Company, which also had Lamartys, which gives him lethal hits, and attacked Morty with them. So the thing is, he will already have had to use his 1 command point for advance and charge, but also it's the first turn, which means Mortarion can't use Disgustingly Resilient. So he can't debuff those close combat attacks.
Wait, why is that? Is Disgustingly Resilient only on your own turn?
No, but it's 2 CP, and at this point, he only had access to 1.
Okay.
So there was no chance for him to defend against this.
Okay.
So if we also throw in the Death Company, which gets reroll hits and lethal hits, what do you think the odds are now that we could take down Mortarion?
It's got to have crossed 50% now, right? Like a 50-50 shot?
So I do want to point out that in this particular case, for reasons that I won't explain now, let me know in the comments if you would like me to explain this in more detail. It only makes sense to fish for those lethals on the chainswords and for Lamartys. But if you do all that with the fishing, you now have a 53.7% chance of killing Mortarion. You're going to do between 12 and 20 damage. And you're going to see that the majority of that damage was actually done by the Death Company. So you are actually a little bit better than odds on to take down Mortarion turn 1 if you decided to commit the Death Company. That said, I can't really fault Tak here because you've got an 85% chance on the charge. If you fail, you're out in the open, which is not good. And if you fail to kill him, then again, you're out in the open and Mortarion can just leave because he flies. So if we multiply that 85% chance to make the charge with the 53% chance of actually killing Mortarion, that leaves you with about a 45-ish% chance to kill Mortarion because you got to make the charge also. I wouldn't take those odds. I'd probably do the same thing that Tak did, but it was a possibility. So Tak did have the opportunity to take down Mortarion. His odds weren't fantastic, but I also wanted to know what would happen in ideal conditions if both players had plenty of CP, so we were able to play Red Rampage, but Mortarion played Disgustingly Resilient. What was likely to happen? So in this case, -1 damage is really going to hurt a lot more than +1 to wound is going to help us out. So in this simulation, we can see that if both stratagems were played, the expectation value was between 10 and 16 damage. So actually, if both players had more CP, the odds of Tak being able to take Mortarion down would have actually decreased. So I think that there's something to be said for Tak just blitzing Mortarion, even though I think it makes for less fun games when you're making those big swingy plays on turn 1. So in this case, Tak only would have had a 28.9% chance to take down Mortarion, and the expectation value, the expected damage, would have gone down to 13.1. So you would have had a 75% chance to bracket Mortarion, but only a 28% chance to actually kill him. I was investigating some other things. I've noticed that some other people have talked about some big damage combos recently, and I wanted to see if any of those damage combos would be effective against Mortarion. So one other thing that Tak actually had on the table is he did have a Blood Angels captain with a 5-man Assault Intercessor squad.
Oh, okay, let's try this out. So this is scenario number 2. The Death Company plus the tanks, he, under best case scenario, still didn't have a great chance of taking them out. out. But you think this might be a little better?
But this is actually a completely different scenario. So now we're going to leave that behind, and we're going to see, what does the Blood Angel's Captain do? So the Blood Angel's Captain is a big old damage combo that a lot of people have been talking about lately. So if you have a Blood Angel's Captain, he's got an Inferno Pistol, he's got a Power Fist. He's got this ability, Finest Hour, so once per game, he can give himself 3 extra attacks and devastating wounds, which is going to be huge against Mortarion's 4-up invulnerable save.
It's a 4-up invul and the Feel No Pain. Oh, does he still get Feel No Pains?
He gets both.
Stupid butthead.
But if you were to take that Blood Angel's Captain, use his Finest Hour, also give him the enhancement Rage Fueled Warrior, which gives him sustained hits 3, and you give him full red rampage, so +1 to wound and lethal hits, and you assume that he is in Melter Rage when he makes it there, and you have played Oath of Moment on Mortarion.
This is absurd. Okay, so this is like super optimal conditions.
Super optimal conditions, one model though.
What? This is just the captain?
Just the captain, all by himself.
Okay.
What do you think?
I mean, I'm pulling this number out of my butt, but I don't know, 60%?
60%. Actually, it turns out he's going to do between 5 and 11 damage, which is still fantastically awesome, considering it's one model that only costs you 100 points.
Oh, yeah.
It's one 100-point model.
That already, okay, did he do as well as the entire previous scenario? Because our previous scenario left us with 10 and 16, 5 and 11. Okay, so it's not as much as that yet, but this is one model.
This is one model, which did not require the investment of an entire Land Raider. Okay. And a repulsor.
And this is just in close... No, it's Melter Range, so he shot his pistol too.
That is true, but if you take a look at the results here, the expected damage output is about 8.2 damage, and only about 0.42 of that damage was from the Melta Pistol. So most of that damage actually comes from his Power Fists. But he, by himself, has a 4.5% chance of killing Mortarion and a 34% chance of bracketing Mortarion.
Wow.
But this isn't the whole combo. The thing is, if you stick him with some Assault Intercessors get to reroll all of their wounds. On top of that, he can actually fish for 6s on something that he has Oath of Moment. So those sustained hits, so if you're fishing for the 6s for the sustained hits, and you're fishing for the 6s for the devastating wounds, suddenly you can actually do some damage to him.
Okay, so now we're looking at a scenario that's the captain and the Assault Intercessors against Mortarion?
So if we just add in 5 Assault Intercessors that have a Power Fist, which essentially gives him the reroll wounds so he can go for those 6s, for those devastating wounds, suddenly your odds of killing Mortarion go up quite a bit.
So we went from 4.5% with just the captain to
40.9% with those Assault Intercessors. Now he's going to do between 11 and 18 damage.
Still, we're looking like a long way from confidence that you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now he's only got a 40.9% chance of killing him, and he's got a 86% chance of bracketing him. But again, this is just a 100-point captain with a 75-point unit. They are definitely punching up in this particular case.
Yeah.
So
God, he's so tough.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I also want to point out that with all those extra Assault Intercessors, they're only strength 6. So even with +1 to wound, they're only wounding on 5s. So those Assault Intercessors only did, 2.4 damage in close combat? Yeah, which is kind of unfortunate. Oh, and then another 1 damage from the Power Fist, roughly.
Woot.
Yeah, that is a little bit unfortunate. Before running these simulations, I actually thought that the way to run this Blood Angel's Captain was with a 10-man unit, because you want to completely optimize what they can do, right? You want to make sure that you're getting the most out of all of his buffs. So I'm like, why would you not put him with 10 Assault Intercessors instead of 5? But in these cases, you're mostly trying to attack things that you're going to be punching up against. And again, those Assault Intercessors with their chainswords only did 2.3 damage. So if you give him 10 Assault Intercessors instead and get 25 extra chainsword attacks, you're going to be buffing their damage from 2.4 to 5.4 damage. So this does actually cross the threshold over 50%. If you had 10 Assault Intercessors, you now have a 64% chance of killing him. But having all those additional Assault Intercessors doesn't actually make a huge difference to their output. So it might actually be effective to pair the Assault Intercessors in a team of 5 rather than in a team of 10.
Wow, that's not intuitive, but okay. I trust your math.
Yeah, I actually really had a hard time with seeing all these people pairing their characters with small units, and in some cases it makes sense because the characters are actually doing a lot of damage, and those cheap units provide them with essentially some bodyguard effect and some minimal damage, in addition to giving their buffs or their special rules to the character. And that's what's really advantageous here, is because the Assault Intercessors are now allowing that captain to reroll all of their wounds.
Ah, so because doesn't matter if you give them 5 or 10, either way you get the special rule attached to the character.
As long as some of them are still surviving, precisely.
Right. The human shield.
Yeah.
Okay, are we going to try another scenario? Because this is looking really grim. This
Yeah.
is like...
Let's take another scenario because, again, part of the reason that I chose this is because in the last couple of weeks I've noticed that Auspex Tactics, a channel that I really love, basically claimed that Blood Angels captain could take down Guilliman, and he had another video which said that the Ork Beast Boss could also take down Guilliman. Yeah. So I started wondering, maybe the Ork Beast Boss could do pretty well against Mortarion as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's take a look at some of the data sheets here. This is something that I don't know quite as well. I mean, my brother plays orcs, but he doesn't usually run Beast Snagga boys.
I will be after that Auspex Tactics.
Yeah. All right. So if we're looking at the Ork Beast Boss, in terms of his offensive profile, he's got a couple of pretty sweet offensive close combat weapons. He has the Beast Choppa and the Beast Snagga Claw, but both of these things are anti-monster 4+. I'm looking at the Beast Choppa in particular because you get 6 attacks, hitting on a 2-up, strength 6, AP 1, damage 2. But one of his special rules is, on the charge, he gets devastating wounds for the rest of the turn.
With his beastly rage. So mad.
So, again, this is another one of those cases where having devastating wounds allows you to fish for some of those devastating wounds to bypass Mortarion's awesome defensive profile and saves.
Yeah, because if you have anti-beast or whatever 4+, then you get devastating wounds on 4s, 5s, and 6s.
Yeah, so every 4, 5, and 6 to wound just bypasses his save completely.
Yeah. Okay, this has got to be... Okay, I think the odds are going to be a little higher for scenario 3.
So here's the nice thing. So essentially, the full combo that I've heard about is that you take the Ork Beast Boss, you give him 10 Beast Snagga boys, because their special rule is that you can re-roll hits against monsters, which your boss then inherits. In the WA, you get +1 strength, +1 attack. If you use War Horde, then you also have sustained hits 1. And there is a 1 CP stratagem that gives you critical hits on 5s.
Wham, blam, whammy!
So you can re-roll, fish for those 5s and 6s. Every 5 and 6 is going to give you a sustained hit.
Wow.
And then you can go for those devastating wounds to just bypass the save roll.
Okay. Are you going to ask me what I think the chances are of killing him now?
Well, I want to see what's going to happen with just the boss first. Let's work our way up.
Okay.
So in the first scenario, let's just say we have the Beast Boss. Let's say that he is attacking during the wall, so he gets the +1 strength, +1 attack. And he's going to use the Beast Choppa for those devastating wounds versus Mortarion. So just the Beast Boss by himself, not accompanied by the boys. How well do you think he's going to do? How much damage?
I have no idea. There's so many complicating special rules in here that any number I tell you, whatever it is, it's probably low, because frickin' Mortarion.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that when you have all of these special rules stacked on top of each other, it gets really, really hard to calculate what is the expected damage value.
Yeah, even the expectation value is a lot of math.
Yeah, it's a lot of math to just figure that out.
Let alone the actual spread.
But if we have this Beast Boss by himself, he's going to do between 2 and 5 damage with an expectation value of 3.9.
This is with all of those buffs that you suggested in the last one?
Well, that is just the Beast Boss by himself in the WA.
Okay. So, okay, well then, yeah, when he gets the Beast Snagga boys, it'll be a little better.
Yeah. So I also want to point out that it is theoretically possible for him to kill Mortarion, but after a million simulations, it didn't happen at all. So it is theoretically possible, but your odds are less than 1 in a million. So effectively not going to kill Mortarion ever.
I think we can say less than 1 in a million is a 0%.
Yeah, basically 0% chance. All right, let's work our way up. So on the next slide, we have the Beast Boss in War Horde, so now he has the sustained hits in the WA, and we're going to give him the strat, which means now he gets sustained hits on 5s and 6s.
Okay.
So in this particular case, now he's going to do between 4 and 7 damage. With an expectation value of 5.5 damage.
Oh my god, frickin' Morty, this is bullshit.
He does kill Mortarion sometimes, though.
It's not
He's got about a 0.04% chance of killing Mortarion and a 7% chance of bracketing him.
Oh!
Yeah, so, I mean, you are going to get some mortal wounds through, but probably not enough to actually take that dude down. All right, so now it's time to go for the full combo. What happens if we're in Warhorde? It's during the WA. We're using the strat so that you have critical 5s and 6s with a sustained 1. And you're with the Beast Boy, so you're going to get another, 36 Joppa attacks? And you get to reroll all of those hits so you can fish for them.
Okay.
What do you think? You think we can do it now? Can we do it? Can we take down Mortarion? No, actually, we can't. We totally can't.
Really?
You're going to do between 7 and 11 damage now.
Oh my god.
But it does boost your chance of killing Mortarion to a whopping 2.7%.
Oh, well, that's, you know what? I'm convinced now.
Yeah, it's not bad. It could totally happen. You bracket him 40% of the time, though, which is fairly sweet. So your expectation value now is about 8.8 damage. I just want to point out that if you have 10 Beast Boys, between their Choppas and their Slugga and that Power Snappa, you're doing about 2 damage. So those Beast Boys don't really do very much to Mortarion, but because you're giving the War Boss the ability to fish for those sustained, you do boost his output by about 24%.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So most of the benefit of the Beast Boys in this scenario is the inherited special rule.
Exactly. Again, this is something I didn't realize before. You don't necessarily want to put him with a maximum squad because the value of the squad is the bodyguard and the fact that you get their special rule.
Right. Wow, that's an important lesson so far. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to focus on what are the rules that the unit will get from the HQ, but really they're not recognizing the benefit that the HQ will get from the unit.
Absolutely.
Which does not require 10 or a big squad. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, I had been confused for a while as to why I was seeing all these players taking all these characters that were paired with minimum squads. And I was like, wow, you're kind of wasting this. But apparently not. It really depends on the situation, but not all the time. Also, in this particular case, Mortarion was not using his Disgustingly Resilient.
Oh, great.
I would like to point out
That's
that...
the -1 damage stratagem?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to point out that if he did play Disgustingly Resilient, his odds of taking down Mortarion were drastically reduced, and unfortunately I can't click to make that box go away. That was an oversight on my part. But it is an even smaller number.
There'll be a little edit right now where you say the number.
Yes, right here. 0.001%. 0.001% chance of bringing him down. So, there's one more combo that I really want to look at, though, because as an Eldari player, I was thinking to myself, now that I'm not always playing Blood Angels, what else can I use to take down Mortarion? And obviously, I have the Avatar of Khaine.
Yes, let's use the bane of my existence to see if it'll take down the bane of your existence.
Absolutely, yes. It will run millions of simulations.
Okay, how did he do? That would be a fight.
I know. So, the Avatar of Khaine, he's got the Wailing Doom, which is this giant spear, or other things. It's a spear in my army. He's got sustained hits D3. All of these attacks are going to be strength, let's see, in shooting, it's going to be strength 16, AP 4, damage D6 plus 2. In close combat, you would use the strike. He's going to get 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 14, AP 4, damage D6 plus 2. And of course, we have the Battle Host rerolls, which means in each one of those attacks, range and melee, you get to reroll 1 hit and reroll 1 wound. And we can't forget that we have access to Strands of Fate. So once per phase, you can just go ahead and plug in a 6 for one of these rolls. And where I always love to use these is on the shooting attack. First you attack, and if you don't get that 6, on your reroll, you plug in a 6 with a Fate dice.
I don't think you should be able to use a Fate dice for a reroll. Hot take.
Dems to
you should have
rules.
to use the fate dice on the first. Anyway, that's okay.
All right, so again, the way I would do that is I would roll to hit, and if I failed, I would definitely be plugging in that 6, so that instead of 1 ranged attack, you get 1 plus D3 ranged hits.
Way better.
Way better. All right, I know you hate the Avatar. Do you think the Avatar can take down Morty?
I would have said yes, but the trend so far suggests no.
Friggin' Mortarion!
Frickin' Mortarion!
Okay. All right, so the Avatar of Khaine does pretty well, but with all of this said, he's going to do between 7 and 15 damage to Mortarion.
I want to point out again, that is 50% of the simulations resulted in between 7 and 15 damage.
Half the time you do between 7 and 15 damage. I also want to point out that he's got a 2.5% chance of just completely bouncing, doing no damage whatsoever, which is so frustrating. I hate that so much.
That's a possibility.
That's a possibility.
I quit forever.
So in this case, in order to get 16 damage, we've got a 24.1% chance of taking down Mortarion.
Is that the highest probability we've seen so far?
That is the highest probability we've seen. Well, there with some of their combos, we've gotten higher.
But the single unit by
In
far.
terms of a single unit, yeah, this is definitely the most effective. So 59% chance to bracket him, 24% chance to kill him. And the expectation value here was 11.4. I'm not taking those odds most of the time.
Yeah, no way.
So
Your threshold is 80%, right?
again, ideally I want to make attacks where I have an 80% chance of success.
Okay.
Again, I get more and more loose with that as the situation gets more desperate and as we get later in the game. But especially early in the game where I expect Morty and Avatar to be facing off, I don't like these odds very much.
Yeah, this is rough.
Yeah, that's not good. So again, the way that I was looking at this, I was like, all right, well, this is something that is probably going to happen to me. So if I want to have the Avatar attack Morty, what do I need to have in support in order to take Mortarion down? And my first thought was, well, I absolutely love to have some fire dragons inside of a falcon, zooming out, being dropped off right in front of a target, and then melting things right in the face.
Okay, so now we're going to draw another scenario. This is the fire dragons jumping out and Avatar fighting.
So we have the Avatar of Khaine jumping out, and then we're going to fly up a falcon, which is going to blast him in the face with a bright lance, a pulse laser, and a shuriken cannon. And then the fire dragons get out and all unload with their melta weapons. And because they came out of the falcon, they get to reroll all of their wounds.
Okay, is it safe to say this is the biggest smash to his face that you as an Eldar player can make?
No.
Oh,
but this
okay, so you stepped it up.
But this is the next thing that I'm going to try. And again, I want to point out that these fire dragons all have Melta 3, and because you can fly them up with a falcon, you should be able to get them within Melta range, which means when they go through, they're going to be doing D6 plus 3 damage apiece. Yeah.
I think I just hate Eldar.
I know.
All right, let's see how this goes.
All right, let's see how this goes. So in this case, we're going to do between 13 and 23 damage.
4 minutes.
This is much, much better. So we actually have a 61% chance of killing Mortarion now, and an 87% chance to bracket him with an expected damage of 18.3 damage.
You know, 61%, that's not your 80% certainty threshold, but that looks way better than anything so far.
That does look way better.
So the fire dragons jumping out of the whatever floaty butt tank and the Avatar have a 61% chance of killing him.
Yeah, but again, this is something that's probably going to happen on turn 1 or turn 2. I don't like those odds either. That seems really, really risky for me, because if I fail, Mortarion's just going to kill him and kill everything, and everything's just going to be in the open. As an Eldar player, everything is squishy. With the exception of the Avatar himself. Everything else is squishy.
Okay, so you got something else you're going to add on to this. Are we going to be able to cross the 80% threshold?
Well, here's my question, though, because as an Eldar player, I usually have a number of bright lances just about, because I've got things like Vipers and Warwalkers and support platforms and things like that. So I just have extra bright lances about. On top of that, with the battle host rerolls, I get to reroll a hit and reroll a wound. So mostly I'm rerolling hits and rerolling wounds with these bright lances, which is pretty sweet. Yeah. So my question is, this is not bad. How many bright lances do I have to add into the mix to make this
reach 80%.
to make this reach 80%.
Okay.
So I'm already at 61%. How many more Bright Lances do I have to add to get to the 80% mark? What do you think?
7. I don't know.
I want to point out, I'm so sorry. I know that the Eldar are hella annoying. I can reroll almost all of my hits and almost all of my wounds. So I actually only have to add in 4 more Bright Lances to cross that 80% threshold.
Wow, okay. So 80% is the percentage at which you're like, okay, this is worth the risk. You needed to use 4 Bright Lances, a Fire Dragon squad jumping out of a stupid grav butt tank, and the literal splinter piece of a god to get confident enough that you could defeat him.
Yeah. I also want to point out here that when I reach that 80% threshold, my expected damage is 23.1 damage. That means, on average, I need 44.5% overkill to be sure that I'm going to kill Mortarion.
Is that a number that we could use in other pairings ever, or is that really exclusive to this?
I think it's really going to depend on the spread, which is definitely going to depend on the individual weapon. We can absolutely do an analysis on this, but I did notice over the course of this video that generally you needed somewhere between a 30 and 45% overkill in order to reach that 80% threshold.
That is actually very actionable and useful information. That's fascinating. Yeah. Okay.
So if I have something that I know is going to do 19 damage, for instance, I don't feel confident that that's going to kill Mortarion with 16 wounds.
God, freaking Morty is insane. Why is everybody talking about Robo Girly Man when they can talk about freaking Morty?
I think it's because Girly Man is actually a Primarch, and Morty is also a Primarch.
He's totally a Primarch.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, I'm really annoyed that when I went to go talk to Drew, I faced him last in 9th edition. He's like, yeah, Morty's not really that tanky anymore. It's kind of sad. I'm like, what the hell, dude? Morty is so freaking tanky. It took the shard of a god and a bunch of other things in order to be pretty confident that I could take him down. As you can see from these scenarios, Mortarion might not be as tough as he was in 9th edition, but he is still an absolute beast. I don't care what Drew says. Thank you so much for watching. This was our 3rd episode, and I wrote this software to answer the questions that I personally had. If there are any statistics that you would really like to hear about, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because if you don't, dingoes will eat my baby.
Thank you for watching another episode of Warhammer Math.
For the Emperor!